October 24th. We are returning from closed session now, so I'll turn it over for roll call. Turn it over for the city attorney's report.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the city council this evening met in two closed sessions. The first closed session was a conference with real property negotiators regarding the Humphreys restaurant site. Our negotiator was the city manager. Under negotiation were price and terms. The council took no reportable action. Direction was given to the city's negotiator. The second item was a public employee performance evaluation. That evaluation was of our city manager. The evaluation was given. No further reportable action was taken.
Thank you. Now we will do roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This will be a roll call for the city council members acting as a housing successor to the Antioch Development Agency. Councilmember Wilson? Here. Councilmember Tiscarino?
Here.
Councilmember Ogerchuk?
I'm present.
Mayor Pro Tem Thorpe?
Here.
Mayor Wright?
Here. If you'd all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a few proclamations to do this evening. Do I have a motion to accept the proclamations? Wow, that was three at once. Councilmember Thorpe, we have a motion by Councilmember Thorpe. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Wilson. Please cast your votes.
There are 5 affirmative votes.
The first proclamation is for Red Ribbon Week. Whereas the city of Antioch values the health and safety of our citizens and our community, and whereas many of the people in the United States are unaware of the harmful effects of alcohol use on the developing teen brain and the relationship between availability and teen use, and whereas locally the rate of alcohol use reported by 9th grade students use in Antioch in the past month is 15% according to the 2015-2016 California Healthy Kids Survey data. And whereas 13% of the 9th graders in the Antioch Unified School District report having consumed alcohol 4 or more times in their lifetime. And whereas it is imperative that visible, unified prevention education efforts by community members be launched to prevent youth access to alcohol. And whereas the National Red Ribbon Week campaign offers citizens the opportunity for youth and parents to demonstrate their commitment to drug-free lifestyles, no use of illegal drugs, no illegal use of legal drugs. And whereas business, government, parents, law enforcement, media, medical institutions, religious institutions, schools, senior citizens, service organizations, and youth will demonstrate their commitment to healthy, drug-free lifestyles by wearing and displaying red ribbons during this week-long campaign. And now, therefore, I, Sean Wright, Mayor of Antioch, do hereby proclaim October 23rd through the 31st as Red Ribbon Week, and encourage its residents to participate in drug prevention education activities not only during Red Ribbon Week, but all year long, making a visible statement that we are strongly committed to a drug-free Antioch. Mayor Sean Wright, do we have a representative from Red Ribbon Week here?
Good evening, Council and Mayor. As you may know, my name is Jennifer Faddis. I work for the Center for Human Development and the East County Alcohol Policy Coordinator. I want to thank the City of Antioch for signing this resolution into place. Red Ribbon Week is a week primarily devoted to teaching students about the effects of drug and alcohol use and abuse all around the nation. Working in Antioch for a few months now, I have completed over 50 one-on-one interviews regarding underage drinking in this community, and have spoken and introduced myself in meetings and to local businesses. From my work, I would like to highlight the issue of underage drinking, as I have done in the resolution language, and would invite anyone willing to change this issue to join me and fellow community members in January 2018 for my first coalition meeting. Schools all around Contra Costa County are participating in recognizing this week, and a few from Antioch, including Deer Valley, are also partaking in this week. I strongly believe that Antioch is a great city that wants to keep its community drug-free, safe, and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
This next proclamation is pretty fun because we get to highlight 4 members of our community who have done a lot. It's called Extra Mile Day. November 1st, 2017 is Extra Mile Day. Whereas Antioch is a community which acknowledges that a special vibrancy exists within the entire community when its individual citizens collectively go the extra mile in personal effort, volunteerism, and service. And whereas Antioch is a community which encourages its citizens to maximize their personal contribution to the community by giving of themselves wholeheartedly and with total effort, commitment, and conviction to their individual ambitions, family, friends, and community. And whereas Antioch is a community which chooses to shine a light on and celebrate individuals and organizations within its community who go the extra mile in order to make a difference and lift up fellow members of their community. And whereas Antioch acknowledges the mission of Extra Mile America to create 575 extra mile cities in America and is proud to support Extra Mile Day on November 1st, 2017. And now, therefore, I, Sean Wright, Mayor of Antioch, do hereby proclaim November 1st, 2017 to be Extra Mile Day. I particularly want to recognize Antioch residents Sandra Kelly, Michael Pohl, Beverly Knight, and Denise Contrell for their individual efforts, and urge each individual in this community to take time on this day to not only go the extra mile in his or her own life, but to also acknowledge all those who are inspirational in their efforts and commitment to make their organizations, families, community, country, or world a better place. So, yes. So I have an extra mile certificate for each of the 4, but I wanted to highlight a little bit about each of the 4 honorees this evening, starting with Beverly Knight. Beverly, with your passion for photography, she started a social media site called Empower Antioch Today, where many of us have the opportunity to have a good night Antioch, posting and picture that really does celebrate the good things that are taking place in this community. She's also been a volunteer for the Antioch's Concerts by the River for the last 5 years at absolutely no pay. And with that, every one of those pictures that she takes in our community are posted on our arts and cultural website, artforantioch.org. And she also serves on the Parks and Recreation Commission. Beverly, thank you. Well, and she takes a park as her own that she cleans up and is always cleaning up. So Beverly, thank you so much for all that you do. The next extra mile highlightee is Sandra Kelly. Sandra has been working diligently down at the marina. And I know, Sandra, where are you today? There you are. She's been working at the marina, just dedicating her time and talents to our community. Because of the efforts that she's put in, she has gained a site designation for our marina and our delta as on the San Francisco Bay Water Trail. She's helped to write a grant to be able to receive $32,320 for us to put in 2 public kayak ramps that are beautiful and a treasure for our community. She started a marina grounds beautification project. She's donated her time, her money in buying plants and planting them, and volunteered hours upon hours planting and restoring our marina trails. Recently, she applied for the U.S. Life Jacket Loaner Program for Kids, which, as I talked to her yesterday, has recently been accepted. So another grant that she's helped to obtain for our community so that all youth down in our water can rent for free life jackets as needed to be able to protect their lives. She started a bike borrowing program down at the marina. She's helped with the marina brochures. She's a docent at the Antioch Dunes National Wildlife Refuge, and she serves on the Parks and Recreation Commission. Sandra, thank you so much. Our next extra mile is Michael Pohl. Michael Pohl is a young entrepreneur in our community who has a photography business as well. And he has utilized his passion and skill for photography to help with the Antioch Police Department's Running Man project at no cost. A wonderful project that highlighted our police department on YouTube and throughout in a beautiful video. He takes pictures and has donated them for our use in the state of the city and other brochures that the city has used. He's given back to his alma mater, which is Antioch High School, even though he's only recently graduated from it. He goes back and helps with photography. He helps in the yearbook assistants as they go through and try to figure out how to do the yearbook again. And he speaks to students about entrepreneurism. And recently, he volunteered his time and labor to help clean up Antioch by purchasing his own power washer, coming down to downtown Antioch, and cleaning up our benches. What looked like green benches turned out to be beautiful wood benches underneath after Michael was done. He's cleaned up benches, sidewalks, he's worked on weeds and trash, and he's helped to repaint curbs. Because of all your time and dedication, Michael, thank you for going the extra mile. Yay. And the last honoree that we have this evening is Denise Contrell. Denise, where are you at? There you are. Denise is an incredible person. She should probably be highlighted along with her daughter. They go out all the time and pick up garbage around town. It's incredible the amount of bags. They have direct line to our public works to be able to get as many bags as they want, and they fill them constantly. She has made it her mission to show Antioch residents that we can have a clean community. And sometimes she gets frustrated because all the cleanup seems to be unrecognized. But we do recognize Denise, and thank you for what you do on your website, on the social media site, and all the time and dedication that you and your daughter put into helping Antioch be a cleaner place. Thank you so much for going the extra mile. Yay! So if I can get my fellow council members to join me down here with our 4 honorees as we hand you your extra mile certificates and get a picture, except our photographers are all getting certificates. So.
Diane's there.
Shortest to tallest? I don't know. You want to be in the middle with this end then?
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you for all you do. Michael. Thank you. And Denise, thank you. And you too.
Oh. One more, Diane. Diane, one more. I blink. One more. How do you feel?
Let me have one more just in case somebody else. Goodness. Now you know we feel like graduation.
You rock. You really do.
Great.
Thank you.
Michael, you doing well.
Congratulations.
Always fun when we can recognize members of our community that are doing and volunteering. And for those that are also volunteering, we have a ton of volunteers at the Antioch Animal Shelter doing lots of things. If you feel like you got missed this year, we are watching, we are noticing, and we just couldn't do 100. So thank you for everybody that's serving our community. Announcements to civic and community events. Nancy Kaiser, followed by Shannon Skinner.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Council. Nancy Kaiser, Parks and Recreation Director. I'm here to share with you a few events that are occurring in the next couple of weeks, specifically on November 11th. We know that is Veterans Day, and this community will come together for a number of Veterans Day commemorations and celebrations. But this community will be engaged all day long. Our disc golf volunteers are going to host their community day that afternoon from 1 to 3. At the community center out on Lone Tree Way, we have our youth basketball clinic all day long. So youngsters that are aspiring junior warriors and warrior NBA players can come to the clinic and prepare for our league this winter. We have birding by kayak that evening down at the marina, leaving from the marina with Delta Kayak Adventures. So there's so much happening in the coming weeks that you'll be hearing more and more information. But again, wanted to share that on Saturday, November 11th, Veterans Day, we have a number of things that will bring our community together and have them engaged. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Shannon Skinner, followed by Antioch Council of Teens.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. On behalf of Summersville Town Center, I would like to invite everyone to Halloween at the mall. We're trick-or-treating from 6 p.m. to 8. We hope to see everybody there. Another event that we have coming up is with Miss Councilwoman Lori Ogertoff is hosting our Alzheimer's Senior Walk. That will be November 3rd from 9 to 11. Currently, we have about 35 different organizations coming out to support our seniors and health resources for them. Can I take 1 second and just say what an amazing community that we have with all these wonderful volunteers that came out tonight to be celebrated. I'd also like to not freak everybody out, but Santa Claus is coming in about 5 weeks. So talk about some events coming up. Santa will be here. Black Friday's coming up. I think we're 14 Fridays away. So with that, more information soon, and thank you.
Thank you. Antioch Council of Teens, followed by J.R. Wilson.
Hi, good evening. On Thursday, the 26th, we'll be hosting a North Bay Fire. Well, we're going to be raising funds to support the North Bay Fire Relief Fund at the Water Park Community Center, where the food trucks will be. This charity is sponsored by the Redwood Credit Union Community Fund, and all of 100% of the donations will be going to the charity to provide relief for the fire victims. So, is that it? Okay, that's it.
Thank you for your leadership. J.R. Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. Today I would like to talk about the Veterans Day Committee. We have been working hard, and I just want to go over the timeline for Veterans Day. At 9:30 we'll be meeting again at the end of L Street at the Veterans Memorial for the ceremony, and there will be a battle of the bands there as well. The parade starts at 11:11. And it starts from the Veterans Memorial and goes down 2nd Street. At 12 p.m. noon, we'll be having a barbecue at the VFW, as always. And then at 2 p.m., we will be having a battle of the big bands at the El Capanel, and that'll be the 30s and the 40s kind of big bands battling each other out, which looks to be quite fun. But it gives a whole day for our veterans to come down and celebrate Veterans Day. And we want to thank the Antioch City Council and the Mayor for all their support, as well as Nancy Kaiser and everybody in the community that has contributed to the Veterans Day Committee and the Veterans Day Parade. Also, as you know, last year we started with the Antioch Veteran of the Year, in which the City of Antioch recognizes them, and we have a plaque at the Antioch Historical Society, and it's the Antioch Veterans Day Committee, along with the VFW, the American Legion, and Delta Veterans Group that nominate a Veteran of the Year. And at this moment, I'd like to announce it. I know he comes back later for a proclamation and gets recognized officially, but we like to recognize him before the Veterans Day Parade, because he does become the Grand Marshal of the parade. And this year, I am very happy to announce that it is Paul Scannell. Yes, yeah, go ahead, clap. Paul Scannell. Paul is a longtime member of the City of Antioch. He was born May 30th, 1947. That means you're 19 years old. And he was born in Boston, Massachusetts. And if you ask him to say his fours, you can get that accent out of him. But he hides it pretty well, except for his fours. He graduated from Braintree High School. If you get to know him, you'll know that's kind of funny. Okay, John. Okay. He joined the United States Navy in 1964 through 1970. He moved to California in 1972 and lived in Concord. In 1976, he moved to Antioch. He married his childhood sweetheart, Winky, in 1967. They've been married for 50 years. They have 1 son, 3 daughters, 15 grandchildren, and 7 great-grandchildren. Wow, congratulations. Congratulations. He joined the American Legion in 2005 and has served his veterans community here in Antioch ever since 2005. He's been a commander for the American Legion here in Antioch multiple times, and he currently serves in that position today. He helps out at all of our events, along with the Disabled American Veterans, as well as a stand down on the Delta. And it was a unanimous nomination. We all came up with the same person, so we're very happy for that. So if Paul, if you'd stand up and be recognized, please. He is an awesome guy, and I look forward to seeing everybody on November 11th. Unfortunately, this year I will not be the MC. I will be in my other hometown of Pittsburgh, California, but we will have the VFW Commander Denny Hollison as our MC, and he is back there. Denny, if you'd raise your hand real quick. And he will be the MC this year, and I know that he will do I told him not to do a great job. Just do a good job, because I like being that MC. So, but with that, thank you very much, and we look forward to coming back and recognizing Paul again. Thank you. Thanks.
Announcements of board and commission openings.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're currently accepting applications for the alternate member to the Board of Administrative Appeals. The board, if I flip over my sheet here, consists of 5 members and 1 alternate appointed by the mayor and confirmed by majority of the council, and the alternate member serves a term of 2 years. They must be a resident of the city of Antioch. The board hears appeals regarding administrative decisions by any official of the city dealing with municipal code interpretations. 3 of the members are encouraged to have some experience in building construction trades or training in the California Code of Regulations. The meetings are held on the first Thursday of each month at 3 p.m. here in the City Council chambers and as otherwise needed. Commissioners are also required to submit a FPPC Form 700 Statement of Economic Interest upon assuming office, and every year thereafter, no later than April 1st. And newly appointed commissions are also required to complete the AB 1234 ethics training within 1 year of appointment, and all commissioners must then take the AB 1234 ethics training every 2 years thereafter. And this course is available online. The deadline for filing is going to be Thursday, November 11th by 5 p.m. I have applications at the back next to the council packet, and they're also available on the city website, and normally they're at the city clerk's counter next to the finance department. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comments on non-agenda agendized items. Yeah. Bob Atlas, giving an update on our fire.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council, distinguished citizens. My name is Bob Atlas, Battalion Chief with Contra Costa Fire. I'd like to give you an update on what has happened in the last month. That would be the month of September. In Antioch, there were 784 calls for service. I think you can do the math on how many per day that is. 16 of those were structure fires, 6 of those were vehicle fires, 22 of those were vegetation fires. Unfortunately, I would like to report that Antioch is the #1 user of services within the fire district at approximately 19.5% of the call volume. Some updates on some information that has recently occurred that you might want to know. In late August and September, the fire district deployed 8 personnel with the Urban Search and Rescue Task Force out of Oakland to assist with the aftermaths of Hurricanes Harvey and Irma. The members rescued over 75 people from flooded homes and conducted grid searches by boat to several neighborhoods, which allowed them to rescue several pets and perform welfare checks on stranded civilians. The second deployment occurred on September 6th for Hurricane Irma, where they were deployed to the Florida Keys and performed wide area searches on Stock Island and went door to door checking on residents. I'd like to recognize the following Contra Costa County Fire District personnel for their work: Captain Jeffrey Clark, Captain Kaz Carbo, Captain Dan McClellan, Captain Greg Sawyer, Captain Dave Watson, Engineer Ron Cutting, Engineer Amy Miller, and Firefighter Carl Taher. 2 years ago, a Contra Costa Fire District employee firefighter donated his bone marrow to a man unknown to him who was suffering from leukemia. In September, firefighter Andrade met the recipient of his donation at the fire station. Tom Darst paid firefighter Andrade a visit to thank him for his life-saving donation. Both men said that they hoped that words would spread and would convince other people to participate in the bone marrow donor program. What a great opportunity that was for them. And finally, I'd like to report that our 51st Fire Academy began officially on October 2nd with 30 new firefighter recruits. These recruits will endure a 19-week rigorous and intense mental and physical training program to prepare them to become Contra Costa firefighters. They'll graduate in the spring of 2018 and will fill some existing vacancies within the organization and a new engine company that will open up in Lafayette, Engine 16, at the new fire station there. That is all I have to report. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Lucas Stewart Chilcott, followed by Moses de los Reyes.
Hi, good evening, council members. I'm just here to recognize 2 council members, Mayor Sean Wright and Council Member Monica Wilson. I did an informational interview on both of them, and they provided me with great insight with what it means to be on the council. And I have a great passion for wanting to pursue that career. So thank you so much for both of you.
Moses de los Reyes, followed by Frank Sterling.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. My name is Moses de los Reyes, and I represent the Iglesia Ni Cristo, or Church of Christ, here in the local of Antioch. Now, I'd like to give out this particular invitation. It's known as the Worldwide Aid to Humanity. The event is going to be on October 28th, this coming Saturday, 9 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And it will be held at our Antioch Compound Chapel, which is 512 Texas Street in Antioch. This particular activity is worldwide, sponsored by the Iglesia Ni Cristo, or Church of Christ. So it's not just for Antioch, but throughout the world. This particular event entails free medical services. We'll have also free food, free clothes, free care packages, and there will be professional, practical and medical practitioners, doctors, nurses, different professionals that are going to be doing the service to the public. And this is open to the public. And what it is also, it's very, very much emphasized that this is for free. It's hard to beat for free. I'm underscoring it, for free, without cost. And it's going to be October 28th, 9 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We're extending our cordial invitation to all of you and to all who are here. Please come over, because this is a public service and a community service of the Iglesia Ni Cristo, or the Church of Christ. We welcome your comment and questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, please. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Frank Sterling, followed by Daniel we'll guess Pardo. Frank Sterling.
How y'all doing? I thought people were coming to speak about the land development in Sand Creek, so I'm hoping that others are here to speak about that, but that's why I'm here today. And so the City Council, you're all here.
If you're here to speak about the land development, that's an agendized item, and we'll call you back up at that point.
Oh, I should wait?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Daniel Pardo, followed by Denise Cantrell.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Daniel Pardo. I'm representing my mother, Elaine Pardo, and our cat, Chloe, who was struck down in front of our house by a driver. The reason why I'm here today and it affected me so much was I recall the day very clearly. I was serving overseas in Afghanistan, and on April 5th, I just came back on the base from a patrol mission, and my mother called me and was in tears. She was very hysterical. She said that a driver struck down our cat. The reason why it's so significant to us, and it was very painful for me to hear my mother cry, is because that there was 2 witnesses outside that actually saw the driver hit our cat Chloe. And they also heard that the engine revved up as he saw the cat, so he killed her on purpose. The thing that is very hurtful to me is that my parents live in front of the elementary high school on Mission Drive. I'm very concerned about that, mainly because of the lack of, say, protective measures around the school and the street, because there are very young children that don't know better, and there's also other owners of pets on that street that can possibly get killed by a cruel driver. The reason why I'm here, sir, is I felt like it'd make more of a difference if I were to be in front of you all. My mother would have attended, but it brings back a lot of painful memories for her. This was our cat, Chloe. We wanted to remember her at her best because she wasn't recognizable after that. I know that a pet isn't as it is also part of the family, but it's also not as big of like as a human's life. But I do know that the effects that it has on a family who has had a pet for a very long time, or also, God forbid, a child or someone else in the community. And so basically why I'm here is I was seeing if there's any way that there could be more protective measures, maybe a speed bump, a sign. I was wondering if it was possible that if there was a protective measure like that, if it could be called maybe Chloe's Crossing in remembrance of her. And plus, it would also be something for the kids to remember. And that's why I'm here. I'm representing my mother and my family, and for Mission Elementary, because there isn't as many protective measures. So that's why I'm representing that today. One more thing. For the park on James Donlin, when I was 15, I actually...
Daniel, I'm sorry you're out of time.
No problem, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Denise Cantrell, followed by Fred Hoskins.
Hello. Hi, everybody. I'm just here to mention that the green donation bins have been popping up all over the gas stations on Lone Tree. And I noticed one was there like 2 weeks ago, and now it's gone. So I don't know if they're just being put down illegally without business owners knowing, but there's a lot. And due to the blight problem we have in Antioch, I'm not sure if I thought we were getting rid of them, or if there was a cap on the donation bins. So there's like 5 between James Donlin and Texas Street on Lone Tree and A Street. So I just wanted to let you guys know. And that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ron, you can pass that on to code enforcement. Thank you. Fred Hoskins. Daniel Gutierrez.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, my name is Daniel Gutierrez. I've a residence here for too many years to remember, but also I'm here to support my partner in crime, and she wants to speak, and I plan on speaking with her or about. But I had a concern when I was given a survey yesterday by telephone conversation, and one of them was, would I oppose the increase in taxes for the city of Antioch? Sales tax, I'm sorry, yes. And I became quite upset about the thought of that, simply because, if we're going to be the highest sales tax in the county out here, it's bad enough that all the stores are leaving the city of Antioch, good quality stores, and going either to Brentwood or to Pittsburgh. And that's not going to do us one bit of good if we gain revenue on sales tax, but if we lose jobs. And even though they aren't high quality jobs, they're still a job. I can remember when we had all the steel plant was really booming with 6,300 people, with Wilbur Avenue, the plants out there, and now we have a service sector jobs that are filtering in for the city of Antioch. But that's my major concern. Also, I was going to help with Violet speaking on the building at Sand Creek. But that's all I wanted to bring up to the council, my concerns. Thank you much.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments? Moving on to City Council committee reports. Councilmember Wilson.
Yes, Mayor. Only one of my committees that did meet was Tri-Delta Transit, myself, Councilmember Thorpe, and a delegation from East Contra Costa traveled to Atlanta for the Transportation Expo. So we got an opportunity to see a lot of technology coming up in the future. A lot of things are going to be coming out here, a lot of clean energy, sustainability. We also had an opportunity to talk to other transit board members of transit boards of the same size and larger about issues that they're working on or they're dealing with in their different municipalities. So lots of information coming back, lots of good stuff coming out of transportation, and lots of questions that we can bring back to the board on things that we can address to help our transit riders out here in East Contra Costa.
Thank you, Councilmember Thorpe.
None of my committees have met other than Tri-Delta, and it's basically the same report that Councilwoman Wilson had. Maybe adding that I believe we have, 4 buses that are going to be all electric buses that are coming, that we're rolling out. In addition to that, we're no longer using the fuel. So we phased out the regular fuel that we use for all of our buses, and we're using some type of organic composite or biodiesel. Not biodiesel. Anyway, it's made from like food disposal and all that good stuff. So we're now using that, so we're not having that type of carbon footprint through all of our buses here at Tri-Delta. So my apologies for forgetting what that was called, but so I'm excited that we have some electric buses and we're no longer contributing to having a major carbon footprint locally here in Antioch and throughout East Contra Costa County.
Thank you, Councilmember Tiscarino.
Yeah, none of my committees met.
Councilmember Ogerchuk.
None of mine met, but I want to share an event that Councilwoman Wilson and I went to last night. Thank you to Chief T for bringing it to the city. It was called the Barber Shop Forum, and it was where the community got to come out and speak with the police officers. And this barber shop was just jam-packed with people. It was very enlightening to hear what the concerns of the citizens were. We had other community leaders from other different communities, such as Oakland, Richmond, San Francisco. There was a lot of police officers that were there. The city manager was in attendance with us. And hopefully we get to bring it back again next year. And the other thing that I learned is not only do they want to have it here, but they want us to participate when they have it in other cities. So I would ask the chief to push it on the site, on the Facebook page, when the other cities are holding these events so that you can go. It's nice to give that support to everybody else in the community. So thank you, Chief.
Thank you. I had a Delta Diablo board meeting where we are, as a board, are continuing to look into the potential to create energy out of working with the dump that's next door. And as that moves forward, potentially saving energy costs and be able to save us as ratepayers money. So looking at the cost analysis of that going forward. So exciting. As far as mayor's comments, Council's been doing a lot of training and a lot of meetings lately outside of our normal agenda. So I just want to congratulate Councilmember Ogerchuk and Councilmember Wilson in going through the Youth Intervention Network training, mediation training to be able to help our youth in our schools. That continues. They are also going through Citizens Police Academy now, which is a great program put on our police department. So thank you for that from our police department. Monica Wilson brought and helped put on the Red Sands Project that was held last week, which was a fantastic meeting about human trafficking, learning the 101 class, if you would, the beginner class on human trafficking and how we might be able to better recognize it as a community, be able to get it out of our community. And Friday, for those of you who didn't, EC Squared Economic Development Summit happened. So the 4 city managers and the economic development directors from the 4 cities, Brentwood, Oakley, Antioch, and Pittsburgh, came together to talk about what they're doing and how they're driving economic development. That was recorded, and so look on your local channel. In the upcoming November, it'll be replayed 6 times, so some great information there. Randy Iwasaki came in from CCTA, talked about the roads, the potential for what's going to happen to Highway 4. There's a little discussion about Concord Naval Weapons Station, so a lot of good things and a lot of good planning taking place in our community. So thank you to all those involved. Moving on to consent calendar. Is there any item that anybody wishes to remove? If not, do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Tiscarino, second by Councilmember Ogerchuk. Please cast your votes.
There are 5 affirmative votes.
Thank you. Moving on to public hearing, item number 3, ordinance of the City Council of the City of Antioch adding Section 5 to Chapter 7 of Title 5 of the Antioch Municipal Code prohibiting the hourly rentals of lodging units within city limits. And I'll turn it over to our city manager, Ron Bernal.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. Our City Attorney, Derek Cole, will be presenting this item.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this item is a relatively simple ordinance. If adopted, this ordinance would prohibit hourly rentals of motels, hotels, and lodging establishments within city limits. I use the term hourly rentals because that's sort of what is known in the industry for the cities that have these types of facilities. Essentially, they're used for prostitution, which is why they are used on an hourly basis. Technically, this ordinance is not written in a way that it prohibits hourly rentals. What it prohibits is the rental of the same unit more than twice in a 24-hour period, or basically the rental on a basis of fewer than 12 hours. And so the hourly rental is really sort of what people call this, but when you sit down to actually draft it and make it work and address the issue we're trying to address, but at the same time not wreak havoc for legitimate dwelling operators, the drafting is technically such that a dwelling operator cannot rent for fewer than 12 hours. In other words, it has to be a daily rental, or it cannot rent more than twice in any 24-hour period starting at 12:01 a.m. But again, that's the technical way when you sit down and work it out that it had to be drafted. But basically what this would do, if it's the pleasure of the council to enact this, is prohibit hotels and motels from being used for illegitimate business uses. And I think we all understand how this would do that. So really, I don't have much of a staff report because I think this is pretty self-explanatory. We have not begun to experience this problem to my knowledge, but it is a problem that a number of cities have experienced throughout the state. And so this is sort of a defensive measure to, instead of dealing with an issue once it becomes a problem, to stop an issue that we know has happened and is possible could happen here, to stop it before it happens so we don't get to a situation where we have to deal with blighted conditions that follow these types of uses. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but that is my staff report.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments on this item?
Open the public hearing.
I'm going to open the public hearing. Do we have any public comments on this item?
I have not received any.
If not, I am going to close the public hearing. This item is now before council. Are there any questions or comments from council? Councilmember Wilson?
More or less a comment and then one question to follow up. So this was an item that I brought to the city manager a lot. So let me go back to, we just had the Red Sand Project last week to bring awareness to human trafficking going on in East Contra Costa County. A lot of people out there do not think it's happening here. We have members of our community that are falling prey to this type of crime. On my studying and doing more and reaching out to services in the county and resources in the county, learned about the, I'm going to call it hourly rate motel ordinance, but for lack of a better term, I've read about other communities doing this, and this was adding an extra layer of protection, which we do need out there. And as our Attorney Cole had said, it brings a lot of blight, it brings a lot of crime, and it victimizes a lot of members of our community. Again, I want to thank the city manager in bringing this forward and listening to me. I want to thank Chief Brooks and his support and my fellow council members. I do have a question actually for Chief Brooks to, my question to you is, can you can you discuss how this is going to be a benefit to our community?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and members of council. So the way I see it, generally speaking, motels that rent by the hour create a sanctuary for illegal activity, and as the city attorney already mentioned, not only prostitution but for drug use. Sometimes these motels will rent by the hour. People will purchase drugs, go into the rooms, use their drugs, and then come out. the prostitution, as he mentioned, and then also the possibility of human trafficking as well. So without this ordinance, these motels could legitimately rent rooms in small hour blocks, which would be a legal business, which really encourages illegal activity. And that bringing that type of seedy clientele down to a particular area is not good for economic development as well, because businesses wouldn't want to come to areas where that type of element was present. So I support any measure that, quite frankly, gives us an advantage in curtailing criminal behavior.
Thank you, Chief.
Councilmember Tiscarino.
Yeah, I was going to say this is, essentially a makes sense piece of policy. I think, it's something that we understand we have to draft carefully, but I think it's drafted correctly, so we can, put this policy together. So I want to thank the council members Wilson and the police department for really working on this and initiating this. And my only question, I don't know if I'm going to have Chief come down again, but it's going to be hopefully, if it goes well, policy. And one of the things I want to know is, how do we monitor this? How do we kind of enforce this? Is it going to be through complaints, or is it going to be something of an audit, or whatever the case may be? I'd just like to know how we're going to be able to make this more effective.
Sorry, I walked away too soon. To be honest, at this point, I don't know. And there are a number of other cities, actually throughout the country, that have adopted a similar ordinance. And I think we would take a look at some of best practices from a law enforcement standpoint. We do not have the staffing to proactively go out and look for this. But if we receive complaints, it is an additional tool that we can use from an enforcement standpoint.
I might add that if you'll give me a second, I'll pull up our ordinance here. But chapter 7, so this you'll notice is within an existing chapter of our code if it's enacted. And chapter 7 of Title 5 of our code does require that every person who is essentially engaged in providing lodging must require guests to sign their names and write their addresses in a book. So there is a record that is required, which, if enforced, it's open. The code requires that it be open to public inspection. So ultimately, the chief is correct that the enforcement mechanisms are not exactly fully fleshed out. But I think working in conjunction with other provisions of this chapter, where there is some requirement to maintain books and registration, if the lodging owner is being honest, and I understand that some people can not necessarily do that, but they would be required to keep records, and I do believe our police department would have the ability to inspect those records and verify compliance.
And that's with this ordinance, because prior to the ordinance, you probably didn't have, even if somebody called, wouldn't have the legal access to check something if somebody called about suspicious activity at a particular motel, correct?
No, we do have the ability to check those books now. That currently exists with our hotels and motels within our city.
But the ordinance makes it even stronger.
Yes, okay. For the hourly rate aspect of it,
okay.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Ogurchak.
I just want to applaud Councilwoman Wilson for bringing this to our attention. With the Red Sand Project, I had no clue this was going on. I would have said not in my town, but I know now that it is. So thank you for the awareness that you brought and the great event that we held. She held the Red Sand Project out at the community center. It was an eye-opening experience, and my grandson, who's 10 years old, learned a lot from Captain Naganaga. So I appreciate the police being out there, and I appreciate you doing this for us. Thank you.
Do we have a motion? Councilmember Thorpe?
Oh, I'll make a motion. But I'm sorry. Councilwoman Wilson should make the motion, and so I'll just leave it to some comments. Thank you for bringing this up, and I'm very proud of you for bringing this issue up. Only because, and I hope that we use this city manager and city attorney as the first step and thinking of this a little more comprehensive as well, and that we also have to look at the number of massage parlors that we have here in the city, and either coming up with some type of urgency ordinance or something that caps the number of massage parlors in the city, because that is a place where folks are being trafficked. And so I was at a Friday morning breakfast club meeting once, and we did have one of our assistant district attorneys talk about the number of massage parlors here in the city that are engaging in the type of behavior that we're seeing in some of these hourly hotels. So thank you, Councilwoman Wilson, for bringing this, and with that, I will
make one last comment before I make the motion. But yes, thank you all for supporting this. Thank you, Councilmember Orgachuk and Mayor Wright, for coming to the training. Again, this is not something, a year from now you're not going to wonder, hey, what happened to this training? This will be ongoing, and we definitely want to keep this issue alive and making sure that we're aware of this, because this training, not only does it tell, not only do we leave a message to these traffickers, not in our city, not in our section of the county, it also lets our community know that, hey, I'm looking out for you. I want to make sure you're safe. I want to make sure nothing happens to you. So I'm hopeful that with these upcoming trainings, for those of you who missed the training last week, we're going to be having more. So hopefully you'll be able to come to that to be an active participant in keeping your community members safe. So with that, let me put my glasses on so I can make the motion. I'm making the motion that the ordinance of the City Council in the City of Antioch, adding Section 5 to Chapter 7 of Title 5 of the Antioch Municipal Code, prohibiting the hourly rentals of lodging units within the city limits.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Wilson, second by Councilmember Orgachuk. Please cast your votes.
There are 5 affirmative votes.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 4, requested modifications to the project approval for the Promenade Vineyards at Sand Creek project. I'll turn it over to City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. This item will be presented by our Community Development Director, Forrest Ebbs.
Good evening, Mayor Wright and City Council. This is an item that went before the Planning Commission a little while back, and since that time we've had opportunity to take pause and work with the applicant a little bit. I think we're making good progress, but that said, we don't have adequate information tonight to give you a good recommendation, and we look forward to working with the applicant over the coming month to come up with a solution that may work for everybody. So with that said, we are recommending that you continue this item to the November 28th meeting.
Thank you. It still is a public hearing, so if there are public comments, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing portion. Are there public comments on this? Evan Gorman.
I apologize, it was the Sand Creek folks there.
Sand Creek. I think that Ben Foley is the Sand Creek as well.
Yeah, but you can't remember.
Very good. Then there are no public comments on this item. If that's the case, then I will close the public hearing. It has been suggested that we continue this item. Do we have a motion to continue the item? Motion by Councilmember Orgachuk. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Tiscarino. Please cast your votes.
There are 5 affirmative votes to continue this item to November 28th.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 5, General Plan Land Use Element Sand Creek Focus Area. Turn it over to City Manager Ron Bernal.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. This item will also be presented by our Community Development Director, Forrest Ebbs.
Good evening and thank you. The item before you tonight, it's a bit of a unique thing. The history on this, it was about 3 years ago in late 2014 that the City of Antioch initiated two projects, a downtown specific plan and a general plan land use element update. In the year that followed, some notable things happened out in the Sand Creek focus area. The first was that the Aviano project was approved as a non-senior project. The second was the Promenade Vineyards at Sand Creek project was approved. Each of these projects has its own merits, but both required interpretation of the general plan or amendment to the general plan to accommodate them. About the same time, there was a preliminary development plan review for the ranch, which is a large development project out in the area. And that brought up a lot of key issues out there. The general plan policies as they relate to the Sand Creek focus area are largely unchanged since 2003. In fact, most of the action since then has occurred in the last couple of years since we started this move to update these. So in a sense, the ground has moved underneath us as we were working towards this. The last 2.5 years have been productive. We've had a lot of meetings, a lot of discussion. It's been very educational for myself and the Planning Commission, and I'll speak for the public too. I think it's opened a lot of folks' eyes to what the issues are out there. The initial intent of updating these policies was to do a couple of things. One was to recalibrate them to reflect today's market reality. There's a very strong emphasis in these policies for a new golf course. Back then, Brentwood had 2 golf courses. Roddy Ranch Golf Course was in full swing, no pun intended, and the city had its golf course. So since then, things have changed in the golf world. So that's one real obvious change that you'd want to make. In addition, there are some opportunities to clarify some language as they relate to hillside policies. That's an issue that when we receive a project that requires significant grading and changes to the hillsides, we're at a bit of a loss at times as to really what the policies are stating. So we were going to use this as an opportunity to clean those up a little bit. But like any project, when you enter into it, you have to look at the context around you. And when we started this, we had just come off 2 project approvals, and there was a bit of a window to work in. Since that time, some pretty significant things have changed, and those have compromised our ability to do this in a meaningful way. And I'll jump into those real quick. The first is the Habitat Conservation Plan, HCP, you hear it referred to. It's a great project. It's a great effort. We've received a grant to do this. We're proceeding. It's an arduous project. It takes a long time. We're working with state and federal agencies on their timeline. And it's moving as well as it could be, but it's going to take a couple of years. One of the provisions of putting together an HCP is that the agencies who are working on this ask that you not change the context underneath it, especially for those areas where they're going to study. Sand Creek focus area, those undeveloped portions will be subject to study and review. And when you enter into this planning agreement with these federal and state wildlife agencies, you actually contractually obligate yourself to give them review authority over city-initiated projects like this. So basically the state and federal agencies have review authority, and at the same time they're very clear that they don't want things to change. So it would complicate, and I'll emphasize that word, it will complicate our HCP effort. It wouldn't stop it, it wouldn't kill it, but it would certainly complicate those things, and we'd be kind of fighting an internal battle over that. The HCP is an excellent program that once you get through it reaps huge rewards to both the city and the developer. What it provides is a standardized mitigation process for habitat and biological impacts. So instead of each project having to figure out where they're going to bank land or address this or that, there's a menu. And if you either write the check or you go by the menu, you're guaranteed approval. And in a world with a lot of uncertainty, this provides a little bit more certainty. And again, that's not just for the developer, but it's also for the city and the public. I'll point out that city projects are subject to habitat mitigation, and our lack of an HCP has hurt us in the past. So we, as an agency, are also looking forward to getting this under our belts, and we wouldn't want to complicate that process. Second major item is the ranch itself. So I mentioned earlier that there was a preliminary development plan review already. But more recently, the ranch has been submitted as a formal development application. The ranch contains 1,337 units on approximately 551.5 acres. It's a large project. It's roughly equivalent to Vineyards and Aviano combined. And when you put them all together, there are about 2,826 units remaining after Vineyards. When you deduct this, you have just 1,489. If the ranch were to be approved in its current condition, about 2/3 of the units out there would be accounted for. And the remaining third would be the most complicated to get through because they're the less obvious sites, the more challenging sites. Because the ranch has been submitted, and because it's complete, they have the ability to use today's general plan, not the proposed policies we're talking about. So we don't have a meaningful way to steer that project through the general plan. Now we have other tools and other things that we can look at, and there will be a comprehensive environmental impact report for the ranch. But these policies wouldn't be the presiding policies for the ranch. So what they really would do is would go through all of this, and they would only apply to that last third. And that last third is going to come in its own time, and we'll address them then. To give you a sense of how the CEQA process works on these, because we'll talk in a second about the supplemental environmental impact report. Any EIR for a project like this is considered a programmatic EIR. So we look at it's taken from, high above, and the analysis is pretty shallow, but broad. The reality is we don't know the project-specific details. We don't know where the houses will be exactly or the roads. So we don't do things like on-the-ground biological surveys. When a project like the ranch or Aviano or Vineyards comes in, we actually go to that ground level type of investigation. We do the geological surveys, the biological surveys in the field, and get that information. So if we were to do an EIR for this project, as has been suggested, at the same time that the ranch is doing theirs, because of the way that CEQA law works, the two could easily be blended together. If legally they could be blended together, and at the same time in the perception of the public they would be blended together. And even though, as I just mentioned, those new policies wouldn't necessarily apply to the ranch, they could be conflated, and it could create a lot of confusion. I think I used the word expend a lot of goodwill. I think we're trying to do good things with these policies, and if they get blended, we may lose control of that message, and plus the expense on top of that. So one of the reasons why I'm asking that it be tabled tonight is it'd be very difficult to do two parallel EIRs on a subject matter that has a lot of overlap, and it's not in the interest of the city to do the EIR for the ranch. They'll be doing their own EIR, and if you confuse the two, it might blur the line between our effort and theirs. And I don't think that serves the public or the city in any way. I understand it's a little complex, so I'm happy to take any questions you have on that, but I'm trying to go as deep as we need to for this conversation. And finally, I want to talk about a general plan update that we have on our radar. As I mentioned, this current general plan, and tonight we're talking about the land use element, even a small portion of the land use element, but the general plan itself has many elements or chapters to it, circulation and growth management, all sorts of things. There has not been a comprehensive update of that general plan since 2003. The lifespan of these documents is about 20 years, and that's kind of pushing it. So that means that 20 years will hit in 2023. It is my goal to do a comprehensive cover-to-cover general plan update by 2023. We have to get our ducks in a row, and that includes the financing of this and start setting money aside and collecting money specifically for that. If we were to spend money today on an EIR, that's money that could be used for the broader effort. It's a pretty significant chunk. As I stated in the report, an EIR for a project like this is roughly $40,000 to $60,000 that could be used for the broader effort. Beyond that, the benefits of doing a cover-to-cover general plan update are immense. You're required by state law to have consistency throughout. It's very difficult to isolate one chapter and update it without affecting others. And that would give us the opportunity to do that. If we could remember back to 2003, it was a great time. In 2004 and 5 and 6, remember our houses were doubling every year, the value. It's a pre-recession general plan. It doesn't reflect today's realities, which are just different. It doesn't reflect Highway 4. In fact, our general plan doesn't even acknowledge the completion of Highway 4 through the bypass. So we have a lot of work to do on that, looking forward to that. Our recommendation as staff is that we table this item. What that essentially does is it allows the ranch to proceed without a competing effort. It allows the city to pick it up if and when we think it's appropriate. And at the latest, I would expect that we would have a full and robust conversation by 2023 as part of that comprehensive update. By then, the outcome of the ranch will be known. Was it approved? Was it not? Was it in some other form? And with 2/3 of the units nailed down, we can work with the remaining areas a little bit more specifically. Right now, it'd be a lot of speculation. So we're recommending that it be tabled. I want to point out that the Planning Commission gave a contrary recommendation. The Planning Commission recommended that we develop a supplemental environmental impact report. They saw benefit in continuing this process despite some of the issues that I presented tonight. And you do have the minutes from that Planning Commission meeting. So with that, I'll conclude my report and take any questions you have. I apologize if I got in the weeds there a bit, but I think it's necessary. Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Let's go ahead and hear from the public before we ask our questions. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing portion of this. There will be, because this is a public hearing, each speaker will be given 5 minutes to be able to speak. Up to. You don't have to use it all. Wendy Agluli, followed by Adrian Hubbard.
Hello, I'm Wendy Gilly, and I've spoken here several times about this issue, so I'm not going to repeat myself, but I am going to repeat a few quotes. First of all, when I first started out here, I gave you the HUD report that talked about how Antioch is heavy on housing and heavy on rental properties and low on jobs. We've talked about this enough times. I've also talked about the perception of Antioch within the community after having lived through the decades of unmitigated growth and all kinds of challenges with traffic and fires in schools and those things. I talked about Measure K. I also looked up back in 2006 in the good days, Mr. Ebbs, when Mayor Freitas at that point in time on September 8th is quoted as turning down a development that had 20,000 square foot lots, and he was actually quoted as there were 144 lots of 11,000 square foot each. And he turned it down in the idea that it was literally just more of the same old, same old. That was in 2006 and a lot of houses ago. Back again in November 2002, another quote for you. At that point, the City Council decided to turn down an update to FUA 1 until they had a complete environmental impact report. That was in, again, November 12, 2002. So all I have to tell you today is that there's probably a lot of developers in there, and they'll tell you another quote, maybe a proverb, which is measure twice, cut once. So unlike Mr. Ebbs, who's already assuming that the ranch is approved, and so we really only have to worry about 1/3 of those houses left in the development, the ranch is not approved. And we can actually measure twice. That's not a foregone conclusion, as much as you'd like everyone to believe that's the case. And I just have one more statement. I'm not going to take my 5 minutes. I have other things to do this evening. But I will tell you this. I've looked up these quotes, and it was a simple Google search. I always do my research sitting right there in that corner. But in 20 years from now, your children and the other citizens of Antioch will be looking up this meeting. And I want you to think about what kind of quotes they'll be saying about you and your decisions. Were you thoughtful? Were you purposeful? Were you cautious? And were you protecting Antioch? Or were you really putting us back into the same situation where we've been, in the hands of the developers? And that's your legacy. That's your quote to decide. Thank you.
Adrian Hubbard, followed by Karen Whitestone.
Okay, we moved here earlier this year, January. We officially moved here. But we lived in Fremont for 2 years. We came up here. We didn't want to move here. We rented in Fremont because of the driving commitment and also because of how Antioch was a couple years ago. I'd like to say it's really nice now. You can see a big difference, and I'm really happy to live here. That's why we moved. I have some concerns about building more houses just because of some issues that as a newcomer I'm seeing. I'm not aware, all of this stuff is new to me. The big thing is the infrastructure. Do we have the fire department? Do we have the police department? I'm looking online and I'm seeing, I'm talking to neighbors. They don't feel that we do. I guess I can't speak for them, but it's a concern. What I do see is we only have the 680 to get here. We do have Vasco Road to go south, But that is dangerous. After, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, everybody's tired. There's always accidents. I don't know what plans there are to expand that. But that's just one of the things I would just like to see us get our house in order before we add more. Also, I would be sad to see this place develop the way that Fremont has. I don't know what the house plans look like, but two things. In Fremont, the houses are on top of each other. There's pretty much no yard. Just drive down to Fremont and Newark. Just take a day trip there and see how they're building the new developments. And that's what I'm concerned about is going to happen here, especially with the fires going on, especially while we're getting our infrastructure together. And the other thing is, in one of the states that I lived in, Washington State, what they did was they would build these huge 4, 5-bedroom houses, and then they would rent it out to like 8 people. So again, we're inviting all these new houses, but I just want to see that we have the infrastructure there to support these new houses if we build them. I'll trust the environmental reports and stuff. But the Sand Creek, I mean, it's a really beautiful place to be right now. And I would just hate to see it turn into concrete. So, thank you.
Karen Whitestone, followed by Violet Skaggs.
Evening, City Council. My name is Karen Whitestone. I'm the Conservation Analyst, part-time employee for the East Bay chapter of the California Native Plant Society. Statewide, that's an organization with about 10,000 members, and locally we have about 1,000 members in Alameda and Contra Costa County. We've been following the Sand Creek Focus Area update for some time. You may have seen me before. Thank you for having this on the agenda again tonight. We think that the city has the opportunity tonight to assert that extensive additional environmental impact analysis is necessary in the Sand Creek Focus Area of Antioch, as well as the opportunity to fully inform the public on this issue. Since the 2003 general plan, environmental settings have changed that the addendum did not address. Here are a few examples. Our chapter's publication from 2010, excuse me, since I have 5 minutes, I forgot it. This is available online. It's a booklet of 15 botanical priority protection areas that we delineated throughout our 2 counties that have high probability of botanical diversity in our 2 counties. The Sand Creek Focus Area is in one of our botanical priority protection areas. So these areas show high probability that rare species live here. Other local organizations have also produced resource management assistance documents in the years since 2003. And agency recommended survey techniques have also changed over the time. In addition, this spreadsheet represents a list that our chapter compiled earlier this year of more than 200 rare native plants with high probability to occur in Sand Creek Focus Area. It's not comprehensive. There may be more out there that need protection. These are locally rare plant species as well as plant species that are rare statewide. Southeast Antioch contains pockets of alkaline and sandy soils, and these rare soils often harbor unique plant diversity. These soil types are increasingly rare in Contra Costa County with continued development. There's more info about that in our Botanical Priority Protection Area booklet, which again is available online. Unique natural history of Antioch, currently unknown at this time, might be at risk, is what I mean to say. Relying on future EIRs from development proposals to examine these resources within only the project footprints would neglect the current opportunity to investigate and hopefully preserve what valuable resources are across the whole Sand Creek Focus Area. CEQA is a tool for agencies to communicate with the public. The addendum to the general plan does not adequately examine potential impacts of possible development, especially potential impacts to biological resources. Additionally, addendums to EIRs are one of the few CEQA pathways that do not require public input or response to public input. Continue the environmental impact analysis to get the full picture on this important decision before a decision is made. Continue discussing this with the public. Thank you very much.
Violet Skaggs, followed by Daniel Gutierrez.
Whoa. Mayor and council members on the board here. My name is Violet Skaggs. I've never done this before. I'm a resident of Antioch for over 71 years. And I've been here and seen a lot of things come and go. Went to schools here and everything. But I wanted to just speak up because I just feel like a lot of changes have happened. And I know changes are good, and some changes have to really be checked out and looked at and gone in a positive light. I've been trying to read some paperwork, and my daughter had gotten online that this meeting was being held about the homes, and there have been a couple of speakers before me who said really well stuff too, and I don't know about the, like I said, the grounds itself, but I just know the people, community. I'm into community. Anyway, Mr. Ebbs, I had read an article. This is a big deal, this project. And so my feelings are, yeah, let's make it important for proper planning. So I'm glad we're talking about this environmental impact report, which I think is very needed because I see Antioch growing and growing. And when I was here, it was hardly 50,000 people. We're 112,000 or more, maybe. I'm just worried about traffic, population increase, and what it brings. The freeway gridlock. I mean, we're so lucky that we're feeling by 2018, we might have a BART's communication, transportation, but it's not really here yet. And we don't know how that's even going to work because we already hear that the freeway's not enough. Anyway, I'm hoping that the people on the board and in this city care about their community, not just how many dollars we can get per the household, I want to know that we all benefit from this. I'm just saying things that bother me, that we could be the bedroom community that I don't really want to see. I want to make sure that we still are looking and working on goals for this town, that we think about job opportunities still, because when I was here, we had job opportunities. My husband, who passed away a long time ago, he worked at one of the manufacturing and the factories, and we still need industry here. And I don't see why we can't kind of entertain this idea. We have the most beautiful waterfront and the water landscape here for, ships. We have a train now, the railway that comes through that says we could take a drive through the Delta. We talked about a ferry. There's always an agenda here in Antioch, and I probably am going to go over everything, but, I don't know why we couldn't have entertained Mr. Bezos in Amazon here. Why couldn't we have had this? I mean, I don't know if you guys are aware, which you probably are. I've gone down Wilbur Avenue and I'm shocked. Is there a trillion cars parked on the parking lot in the old Crown Zeller back? What are we doing with the environment there with all these vehicles? My goodness, that used to be manufacturing. It would be wonderful to bring jobs back. Find the attraction, the image that we need here in Antioch. So I'm really, really worried about that if we forget about the community and what it needs, and that we all are living here, are we going to, I'm not avoiding and wanting not no affordable housing, but we're going to have more roads and highways and traffic and safety and schools that we need and more parks. And I wish our parks were a little bit better. I know they say they're working on them, but one a year, that's too long to wait. And we need places for teens to keep going to and play and exercise. Our poor policemen, our poor firemen. I mean, the Contra Costa Fire District mentioned that we are big callers for the fire department. I just heard that tonight. Very interesting. I'm worried about the Postal Service, the delivery.
Thank you very much.
I told you I'd go over.
You did. Thank you.
And I'm really sorry, but like I said, I'm hoping the environment that you really work on it.
Thank you. Daniel Gutierrez, followed by Evan Gorman.
I just want to reiterate a few things that Violet says. First of all, she's been a resident for 71 years here. She's seen a lot of growth, seen a lot of things, but you know what? I commend her. I commend her having the conversations we had at the house, because she wants to know how the city's doing. She wants to be involved with the city. She's frustrated to see when we talk about 400 new homes, and we look at the traffic. For every home, approximately 2 cars are represented with that. 4,000 homes, but any event, that's traffic that we here that have been in Antioch for a number of years have to put up with. And I don't see any environmental impact reports suggesting that the transportation issue has been resolved or will be resolved. I think Highway 4 made an expansion, but I don't think that's proper or that's enough to accommodate 4,000 new homes or any of that building. One, I don't know what it does for the general fund of the city, but I can tell you right now, I'm sure it would be eaten up with the community service that we'd have to provide. Like one, we increased taxes for the police. How many policemen did we get? 2? That hasn't been fulfilled yet. Now, with 4,000 new homes, we're looking at additional policemen. We're looking at additional fire service. We're looking at more stuff that has to be provided by this city to accommodate 4,000 new homes. And I don't think the issue that we built 400 homes is going to be beneficial to the city whatsoever. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Evan Gorman, followed by Frank Sterling.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, and staff. Staff for the reports you've done, and Mayor and Council for having me. I'm Evan Gorman. I work as an urban planner. I grew up in Antioch, and then I grew up in Antioch and lived here until I had to go off to school to become an urban planner. And then after I got done with school, well, during it, I learned about the Sand Creek Focus Area and what was going on, and I started volunteering my time every so often, a couple hours here and there, because it was against everything I had learned in school, that, you know, everything that increases quality of life and that makes a nice place, it was against it. It's not walkable, and Antioch needs to get more walkable. It's too much development on open space. It's lower density than the average neighborhood in Antioch. It increases greenhouse gas emissions through car trips. Antioch has great plans, like the EBART specific plan, the development around it. You know, I'm very proud of Antioch for creating something like that, and we don't need to do plans that will lower quality of life if we have such good plans there. And I was advocating for all of that before I actually saw the focus area again. The last time I had been there, I was walking around there on Empire Mine Road as a teenager, and then after volunteering my time on the planning merits, I went and actually saw it again, and then it had a whole new impact on me. You know, it's beautiful, it's green in March, right now it's beautiful in October, and it has habitat for plants and wildlife, and I think it's an asset to the city and is beautiful as is and could be public land someday. And just looking at the map over here, I see that the city has those three assets. It has the community, it has the waterfront, and it has those hills at the bottom. And I would hate to see us get rid of one of our assets. So I oppose the plan and would like it tabled. And thank you so much for your work on it.
Frank Sterling, followed by Ben Foley.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming out and having this discussion about the land. And I wrote up some stuff, but I think it's all out the window after hearing everybody. And what I would ask is that you listen to these folks and what they're talking about. This young man that was just speaking went off to school to study about urban planning, and he said it was against everything that he learned in school. What does that tell you about this plan that's happening? The woman that came up here and spoke and that talked about your legacy. What is it that you're going to be for your legacy? You're going to have just more track houses out there in the beautiful hills, or are you going to do something bold and something creative that's going to protect this land and it's going to protect the city? We all try to commute in the morning. I don't know if you guys are big commuters, but if you try to get out of Antioch and get over to the hill to Concord or even further, it's a nightmare. And you're going to add more to that. So a lot of people spoke tonight about the environmental impact studies, and you guys make the decisions for the city, not just for the people, but for the land, for the wildlife, for the endangered species, plants and animals. And I really would think that you guys, or hope that you guys would take that into consideration. We do have this great, beautiful space that the young man just mentioned, the water, the great hills right here. And we have this great downtown. I recently went to Livermore downtown and seen how beautiful that was. You know, it'd be great to have some attention focused on our downtown. And if you want to have a great legacy with your time on the council or your time as mayor, do something bold and something great with that area. Protect it. Keep the land as land, not as asphalt, as they were saying. One thing I learned when I did a story for the radio about Black Diamond Mines and open spaces and the development they did right outside Black Diamond Mines with Mike Moran, the coordinator, docent coordinator of the East Bay Regional Parks, was that what is very important with our open spaces is connecting lands between the open spaces. And that is part of one of those connecting lands. So everything I wrote, I just kind of threw out the window, and I'm hoping that you guys will take into consideration what these young folks are saying. You know, look at how young these guys are that are actually studying and trying to work with this. So I hope you take into consideration what they say and what other people came up here and said, and really think about what your legacy is going to be. Are you going to just build more track homes out there? Or are you going to do something bold and beautiful and keep it pure, make it walkable, make it, you know, a usable open space? And that would be, I think, a great legacy for you guys, instead of what the lady that came up called the same old, same old. Are you guys just going to keep on building more houses out there? Or do you want to do something great, something that people remember, some people that will look back and say, oh, this is the city council, this is the mayor that protected that great space, that made the space usable for us and for our kids and for our grandkids. So, and one thing I mentioned before I go, I'm glad to hear you guys had the barbershop thing. I'm sad that I missed it. So I would wonder how the planning was that and the outreach for people to learn about that. It's great that it was packed. I would have loved to be there, and I missed it, and I was at the home watching football. So that would have been something I would have been really interested in attending. So I look forward to another one of those, and maybe someone could shout out. I know you guys don't talk back, but maybe where was it advertised, or how did people find out about that? Can you guys say? Was it on the police department Facebook, or where was it? That was it? Oh, all right. So anyways, well, thank you for having that, and really take into consideration what these folks are saying, especially these young folks that are talking about urban planning. This guy went to school, and he just came back and said it was against everything he just learned in school. So see that beautiful space down there? Let's keep it like that. Thank you, guys.
Ben Foley, followed by Lucas Stewart Chilcott.
Okay, thanks for staying up so late to make thoughtful decisions for our community. I really appreciate it. I know you guys all sacrifice a lot to do your work. I would just like to urge you to do whatever is possible to protect that area. I know you guys have to allow some development probably, but if you could minimize it as much as possible, I would be very appreciative, not just because of less traffic, but because I hike out there every day. I go to Frederickson Road and I hike up onto the ridge on the eastern side of Black Diamond Mines Regional Park, and I'm there almost every single day. And to me, that's the grand asset of Antioch. That's why I rave about Antioch when I talk to people about where I live. And that area, it's taken me years to realize just how much richness there is in wildlife, because at first it just looks like grassy, dried hills. But when you hike there every day, you start to notice subtle things. Where there's a little bit of water, it's like an oasis. And I've just started to notice that there are these oases there, and they're just these magnets for all sorts of action in terms of wildlife. And the Sand Creek area is a place where there's going to be water for parts of the year. So it's just intense activity around those water sites. There's little small oases of water. There's jackrabbits, there's bluebirds, there's falcons, there's all sorts of birds of prey going after the mice and things that live in those wet areas. Water is the source of life. Currently, I've just noticed over the last few weeks, golden eagles have started to move into that end of the park. And they are amazing birds. They're really just so much more interesting to look at than the falcons. They're just, the way they fly is mesmerizing. So we have a crop. There's like 3 or 4 golden eagles that are living in that part of the park now. I'd like to see just more habitat for that kind of wonderful stuff in Antioch, and I don't see any appetite amongst my fellow citizens for more houses. So I hope you could keep that in mind as you make your decisions. Thanks for listening.
Lucas Stewart Chilcutt, followed by Joel Devilcourt.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Lucas Stewart Chilcutt, live at 212 Matsuquoi Road, Antioch. I just was here to talk to you about this item, focusing on the ranch west of Kaiser. I spoke at the previous Planning Commission against the building of the 1,000+ homes, and where they made that recommendation to you. That was brought to you tonight by Mr. Ebbs. I have a strong feelings against this because the land was the Carey Ranch, where Jack Roddy owned. Jack was also an Antioch dentist. He was my great-grandfather and owned cattle that was raised on this land west of Kaiser, also known as the ranch, going there each day, making time for his patients as their dentist. Rewind some 50 years ago, we sold that land, but I still keep that as part of my family legacy. I've always took that lineage as a prideful history that I've always had of myself and my family. When I would go to Dozier Libby Medical High School, I would always share that legacy, that knowledge to the staff and the students there. Hey, look at that beautiful land across the Sand Creek, or the Deer Valley roadway. They're like, wow, that's so beautiful. And I would say, yeah, that was a part of my family in the past. But the story would be so much different if you would see waves of roof lines along the horizon when you see the sun going down and you see the mountains, the mountain range. It would be so much more different when you see those homes. It wouldn't have such of an impact to myself or to the people that I would be sharing it to. So I just wanted to stress that importance of myself and of so many others, keeping this land natural, as a ranch style, as a purpose for people to use. Just please keep this land as natural and table the current general plan land use plan. Thank you for your consideration.
Joel Devilcourt, followed by Matt Francois.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. It's good that really there's only two options in front of you this evening, and both of them are good, which is to table a plan that has divided the city and the community, that has led to a lot of people who are turning up tonight and sharing both family stories and personal stories about what they feel like are the right directions for what should happen in Sand Creek. And the other, which is to do more environmental review, which is also good for the public. It's providing more public information. And I understand as well that there are many complications to that. And so I think the decision before you is pretty clear. But I just want to reinforce the reasons why it's a mistake to move forward with the addendum. That analysis actually has more than 71 acres that are in addition to the original general plan. So actually they're a totally different study area, and it doesn't actually compute between them. And so you would actually have to do something more significant than an addendum to be in compliance with CEQA. There's also there's a very significant office and commercial component that was eliminated from the general plan, and that loss of jobs violates the city's general plan, and that jobs housing balance, which was carefully constructed 15 years ago, would be out of whack, which would also violate CEQA as well. And so it's very important. I know a lot of people are concerned about the jobs housing balance in the city as well as East County in general, and it's really, really critical to make sure that those planning decisions are made well as have the environmental impacts of those studied. So it's a really careful thing and should be done right. There's also been obviously major changes in the last 15 years. New parks have been created. New special status species have been discovered. And there's obviously a considerable amount of traffic and changes that have happened in the kind of land use and transportation patterns of East Contra Costa that are critical to study as part of this and that haven't been studied adequately enough. So we are pleased that there's no recommendation to move forward with the plan and addendum this evening. And that plan could generate upwards of or more than 40,000 car trips every day from those 4,000 housing units that would be proposed there. It's a massive amount of development in the southeast area, and that was not studied adequately enough. So, ultimately we believe that full and comprehensive environmental review is critical for Antioch, but at this point in time, let that burden fall on the development community, which is proposing to develop natural and agricultural lands that have a great legacy and a beautiful contribution to the city of Antioch. So if that's what they want to do, then the burden should fall on them and not the city, so that the city can focus on more important existing resources, fire and police protection issues, and the kinds of existing issues in the neighborhoods around Antioch that are really critical that people are speaking to this evening. And so with that, I just want to quickly, kind of highlight that, our thoughts at Greenbelt Alliance are very much going out to those affected in the Bay Area right now with the fires. Even our director in the North Bays, she narrowly averted the fire. It came right across the street from her home. And so without rigorous planning, without a real understanding of the kind of the infrastructure impacts, the personal lives and the families that could be at stake of increased fire risk in this area, I think it's irresponsible to move forward without a really clear understanding of how this could impact families here and make sure they're safe and secure. So you can also reduce those risks by planning for development in the right places that's in existing areas where there's infrastructure and there's the right types of protection. And so we strongly encourage you to continue to encourage that to happen. And so I just want to leave with, I think it's been inspiring tonight to hear new and fresh stories that I haven't heard, but I've heard a lot of stories over the last year since we really kind of stepped up during this planning process. And it's great to see that people have such a passion about Antioch and want to see this place be the best it can be, and I think you all feel the same. So hope you make the right decision tonight and look forward to communicating more with you in the future. Thank you.
Matt Francois, followed by Juan Pablo Galvan.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Matt Francois, Rattan and Tucker on behalf of the Zika Group, which is the owner of the Zika Ranch. We're here tonight in support of the staff recommendation to table the general plan update, in addition to the reasons that were articulated by Mr. Ebbs. It's our strong belief that the plan itself is in need of further refinement and consideration, particularly in terms of development yield, density and utility infrastructure and roadway issues, so that your comprehensive general plan update process, which you're about to embark on in a few short years, seems to be the logical opportunity to revisit those issues. We also want to just point out briefly that tabling the general plan update doesn't mean an end to development in the focus area. As you well know, you approved the Kaiser Medical Center under the current general plan. The Vineyards and Aviano projects were also approved under the general plan, and the ranch project is being processed under that plan as well. So your current general plan gives you the discretion, the thought, the consideration to consider worthwhile projects for the city. It doesn't put an end to everything, but it gives you, those projects have to come before you, and you have the discretion to say yes or no to them. And then in a few short years, you're beginning the process of comprehensively updating the general plan, where you can reconsider policies, long-term planning policies, as so many here have recommended. So thank you for your careful consideration, and in closing, we're in support of the staff recommendation to table the general plan.
Juan Pablo Galvan, followed by Mark McGuire.
Good evening. My name is Juan Pablo Galvan, Land Use Manager for Save Mount Diablo. It's a little scary to think that it's been almost 3 years since I first heard about and became engaged in this process. So, wow, 3 years older. Oh, man. Having been engaged throughout this entire process, we definitely appreciate all the many hours that staff has put into this proposed plan, the numerous meetings of the Planning Commission, the City Council, not to mention all the other numerous stakeholders. At this point in time, I'll just come out and say it, we support staff's recommendation to table this plan. As it stands now, despite all the work that has gone into the plan in its current form, we find significant shortcomings with it, namely insufficient protection for hills, Sand Creek, and areas that should naturally be protected, that are surrounded mostly by protected areas already. One of the most important aspects of our work for this process has been really significant community outreach, and throughout that process, really no one has said we should have thousands more houses in this area. In fact, the vast majority of people say no development out there whatsoever for numerous reasons that have already been mentioned by the speakers beforehand. So it's a good way to thrash out issues if you're going forward with an environmental impact report, but it really just, if an environmental impact report was prepared for this, it would not fix the current shortcomings that this plan already has. And I'd like to very much echo staff's comments about doing something like this while the city pursues a habitat conservation plan / natural community conservation plan would cause significant complications with the government agencies. And I say that because of my previous job, I was a professional consultant whose specialization was preparing HCPs and NCCPs. So thank you very much tonight.
Mark McGuire.
Good evening, Council. My name is Mark McGuire. I'm a longtime Antioch resident, and I'd like to disagree with Mr. Ebbs. I think the Council should take the Planning Commission's recommendation and do a comprehensive EIR excuse me, on the area, because the ranch project is going to do one for their project, and it's going to be focused on their project. It's not going to look at the whole area, and this is one of the things the Council or the Planning Commission was looking at. I was at that meeting, and it's necessary to get an entire look, because there are plants out there that could be endangered and wiped out. There are animals out there. I personally have seen a burrowing owl in area that would be developed, and you can have a nice little plan saying, oh, we're going to set aside this land so the endangered species will live over here. Maybe they won't. Maybe they die off. So it's better to look at the whole project slow down the ranch project. I understand that they can move ahead under the old general plan. I think you have the ability and the power to slow it down or stop it until you also relook at your general plan, because you've made exceptions to that for Aviano project. That was supposed to be a senior. Now it's not anymore. But your general plan called for it to be senior housing area. So some of this, you say, well, we can rely on the general plan, but it isn't really in existence anymore because you've made enough exceptions and changes. And slowing it down, taking a look, and saying, this is really what we need to do. Because this land, once you build on it, it's gone. It's a marvelous asset for the city of Antioch. I've hiked out there. I've ridden bicycles out there when I was much younger. And it's just a good asset. The amount of traffic, as one person said, on Highway 4 now, I recently had to go to jury duty. I started in Antioch to get to Martinez. We all know how far that is. It took 2 hours because it was a morning jury call, and I had to go right in the rush. You add 4,000 new homes, and it's going to be more than just 2 cars per household. The area I live in, Antioch now, which is off of Dallas Ranch, there are houses in my neighborhood that have 4, 5, and 6 cars parked out front because multiple families are going into these larger homes. And if you build those kind of homes out there, there's nothing that says that's not going to be the same impact. And it's just a matter of slowing down, taking a better, more comprehensive look at the impact on the city and on the residents and on the environment. Thank you very much.
Are there any other public comments on this?
No further comments.
With that, the public hearing portion of this item is closed. This item is now before council. Questions and comments from council? Councilmember Thorpe.
So we heard a lot of comments tonight, and I think that they're and all very valid comments, and I certainly appreciate all of them. I do just want to point out and clarify for those who may be watching and those who have suggested that that what's before us is some type of approval for housing. It's not. It's just it's a policy that's being updated, a policy that will still be date stamped of 2003. Correct?
Yes, the current general plan policy is predominantly dated to 2003.
So we're just making a policy, or excuse me, we're just being asked to consider or think through a policy that has to do not with 4,000 housing units, because the previous city council, 3 of them who are here tonight, approved about 30% of the 4,000 housing that is allowable in the Sand Creek focus area, correct?
That's correct. About 30% have been entitled.
So that means we're dealing really with 2,800 allowable housing units in the Sand Creek focus area. In addition to that, I also want to point out that just to add perspective to, I think, what has happened in that time frame, was it in 2005 when the voters extended the urban limit line?
Yes, Measure K.
That extended the urban limit line, and it would have given Mr. Roddy the opportunity to build additional executive style housing, including a hotel.
700 units in a hotel?
Yes. And so I think, sometimes that 4,000, and in addition to that, this 4,000 number is really a reduction prior to 2003 from the very ambitious 8,000 units that back in those days, I think Don Freitas was mayor then, were striving towards. Correct?
Yeah, 8,000 units. I don't believe. Yeah, they were definitely on the table, and that's where that conversation began at one point.
And so I probably am most averse to the idea of suburban sprawl. But I wanted to point these facts out so that folks aren't confused about as to what we're dealing with here today. We're not being asked to approve any housing unit. I also want to clarify something. If we look at this update, this environmental impact report, and the ranch doing their full environmental impact report, if we look at it as a puzzle, they're really filling in that puzzle for us already if they move forward. And we decided to put this aside, correct?
Yes, they would have a project level EIR, which would be much more detailed than anything we would do.
So then we would come in the back end and fill in the rest of the remaining the remaining projects that would be there.
That's correct.
Okay. Lastly, I am, and I appreciate all of staff's hard work on this, and I appreciate certainly our advocacy groups who are out there, and folks have brought different perspectives. And the mayor and I had our community forums where we had folks come and share their thoughts. And one of the things that I certainly took away from that was one question that an individual asked, and he asked me, how does additional housing or single-family housing units benefit Antioch in the long run? And I did take that to heart because, as we consider real applications for housing, I will certainly take that to heart and use that as part of my consideration in making sure that that there is a benefit to Antioch. And if there's not, then we'll know how I'll vote. But I do want to say about the process. I'm just a lot disappointed on where we're at today. We spent a lot of years doing this, and I'm one of the things you didn't talk about today was like some of the concerns that the East Bay Regional Parks District had. They sent us a letter back when this was going through the Planning Commission, and I'm kind of struck by how we've come up today with the reasoning as to why we should table it to be everything contrary to what I understood from what the East Bay Regional Parks District was asking us to do, and contrary to what then your recommendations to the Planning Commission were. And so I think that this was an opportunity for the city to get it right, and we're at a point where we haven't been able to get it right, and I'm just a lot disappointed about the process and where we're at today.
Councilmember Tiscarino.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, there was a lot of compelling stories out here, so I do appreciate your input. This is not an easy task for us to consider, but we do have to make some sort of decision, and it's going to be a little bit tough. But we understand that each development is going to be processed and talked about and set forth individually. So we know that. So again, as Councilmember Thorpe stated, that we're not making an approval process or a policy decision on an individual development. We're looking at an entire focus area that we have to make a judgment on. You have to consider, again, your habitat, your hillsides, and things like that, and I kind of agree with Councilmember Thorpe on being a little disappointed that we didn't get none of this stuff done beforehand, so we can make those decisions. So I think we need to do that. I don't know if extending it to a possible 2023 is going to do it. And the question I had before I continue on is, if we do consider a environmental impact report now, it doesn't say that there might be another one several years from now that might change, right?
Yeah, the only reason you do an environmental impact report is to address the impacts of some project you're doing. In this case, the project would be those changes to the policies. We don't do proactive environmental impact reports, just to study for the purposes of analyses. So yeah, if we were to have a project today, 5 years from now, if we do a comprehensive general plan update, we're going to do another EIR for that broader project as well.
So with that said, any applicant that comes in is pretty much mandated to do those to do that process, and we're expecting to do so. So what I'm getting at is whether you're supportive or opposed to a different housing development. That's not the case that we're making a decision tonight. What we're trying to accomplish is, what are we going to do with this general focus area? And if we're going to do it correctly, I think we need to make sure that all parties are involved. And that's why I'm leaning towards the tabling. I don't like the word tabling, because tabling doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be readdressed anytime soon or anytime later. If it was a continuance and a specific date, I'd probably be a little bit more happier, because that puts everybody and all responsible parties on the table to start working. But at this point, we need to get everybody together and make this thing work right, so we don't have to do this again. Focus plans and general plans do get outdated. We understand that. 10 years, 15 years down the road, it's going to change again. We don't know what the city of Antioch and how it's going to grow. We know, and as a longtime resident here, we know that we are growing. There is a need for housing. We do acknowledge that. The amount is debatable, but there is a need. Other cities here are growing as well, so they're going to have to deal with infrastructure and traffic issues as well. I think we are in a better situation than our fellow cities out in East County. I think they're more of a bedroom community than we are, but we need to make sure that what we do here and what we make and decide here tonight is going to last for a long time. We're making the right decision. So I'm not prepared at this particular point to move forward with an environmental report, but to make sure that we hold you guys accountable, make sure you guys are starting doing your job, and come back to council, whether it's this council or the next council, with a good plan.
Councilmember Wilson.
Thank you. So, thank you for your report. One thing about your report I did notice, and I don't know if my fellow council members had this, some of your report's a little muddy.
Sure.
There were things that seemed to be missing. I know, for me, jumping to the Planning Commission meeting, that's the part of the report that got really muddy because things were left out. It would have people's responses, but no questions. So, which made it a little more difficult to me to understand why the reasoning of the Planning Commission bringing up the addendum. So for one thing, that's just one thing. I just wish the report wasn't so muddy and unclear in areas, and that it'd be a little more direct and to the point. Also, I wanted to ask, although Councilmember Thorpe did a good job explaining as this EIR that would be coming from the ranch is more of a puzzle piece in it. So thank you for that, because that wasn't really stated in the report. So it gave a better understanding to that. So the two questions I have is, can you talk about the discussion that, I know you don't have to go into length, but the discussion that happened in the Planning Commission in regards to the addendum? And then two, one of our speakers, who unfortunately I can't remember his name, talked about if the addendum that was being recommended was in compliance with CEQA.
Yeah. I'll start with your second question. So our city attorney has looked at it. CEQA is it's not a black and white law, so it's subject to a lot of interpretation. And the interpretation that we received and the advice given is that the addendum wasn't a legally adequate tool. That said, CEQA is a sliding scale, and there are always opportunities to do better and deeper analysis. But by no means was it an illegal addendum or unlawful, if we should have proceeded with that. So that was the legal advice that we were given. In regards to the Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission they went through a lot of these meetings. They had a lot invested in this, and I think there's remains a strong interest to see something come from this. The recommendation that I gave to them, I actually gave them, laid out three options for them. One was to recommend, approval as with the addendum. The second was to recommend tabling, and the third was to recommend a supplemental EIR, and that's the one they took. I don't want to speak for them, and I can tell you that the motion came from Commissioner Motz, and I think he just had some very strong opinions about a direction he'd like to see the policy update going, potentially, and not necessarily the way it was written and presented by staff based off our recommendations. So I think he may have had an interest in taking it in a little different direction, having the opportunity to work through it. But I don't want to speak for him, but that was, just to paraphrase, it's sort of what was expressed. Further opportunities to improve on it.
It just would have been nice to see. It was just because that I like going back and reading the conversation. It just seemed that part of your report was a little unclear.
I apologize for that.
So that would have been really helpful in this decision making or the process of whether of tabling this or going forward with this. Although right now I feel like I'm leaning more towards tabling this so we can get a better understanding and really get an overview of everybody on how we should move forward in this.
Thank you. If be okay, could I, Councilmember Thorpe brought up a great analogy of filling in that piece of the puzzle. And I want to be very clear because I think it was stated tonight, by no means am I suggesting that the ranch project is going to be approved as it's submitted today. And let's say a year or two from now, some action will have been taken on that project, either approved, denied, approved in some other form, but at least we'll know for the 551 acres in the middle of the Sand Creek Focus Area what's happening. That'll inform even better planning moving forward. If it's a full 1,300 homes, we'll know that. If it's 600 homes, we'll know that. But at least the biggest portion of that valley will be accounted for in one way or another, and we can't stop that. That decision will have to be made in these chambers at some point in the next year or two. So I want to be very clear that I'm not presuming anything.
Councilmember Overchuk.
Just a couple comments. I mean, I understand on the HCP as to why the staff wants to hold off on this, and it's a very important part, a very important piece of this. When did we get into the HCP process? Wasn't it this year?
I think it's been about a year, a little, like maybe a year and a half even, since we first were approached.
To me, that's a big picture for the developments out there, is this HCP piece and possibly the supplemental EIR. So I'm on the opposite side. I want to give staff kudos for seeing that we're not getting this right. This is not the general plan. This is not the time to do this, that we need to take a step back because there are other projects that are subject to this plan. Including the ranch, if it was to go forth. So I'm personally am for the tabling or the continuance of this update, but I don't want to be too hard on staff because I want to do it right this time and not have to keep coming back and keep doing this. So I don't want to belabor the fact which Councilmember Wilson brought up. It is just hard when you're trying to go through all these facts and you just have one side of it. You didn't know what the questions were to the answers that were received. So you're trying to piecemeal that a little bit. So I could have gone back on the planning meeting and read a little bit more. So I could have done a little bit more study on that. But if it's coming back before us, I do appreciate the fact that staff wants to get it right. And we want to do it right this time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just make my comments. This we spent a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of resources as a city on this. At this point, our decision isn't to be made on how much we spent. It's to be made on what's the benefit to the city going forward and how much more money will we spend if we continue going forward. If we continue going forward, we're going to spend more time, more money, more resource. The potential for litigation without a lot of benefit to the city. And based on those things, we should not take that risk as a city. And so for us to look at it, we've got 1,200 homes that have already been entitled, another 1,300 homes that potentially in a project are coming forward. At some point, to your point, we're going to have to vote on those. That's 2,500 of the 4,000 homes that are going to be decided on in one way or the other. And for us to table this and to see how that plays out before we invest more money into this process, I think is a wise and prudent thing for us to do as a city. So thank you for the efforts that you've put in.
Thank you.
Councilmember Overchuk.
If council's ready, I'll make a motion to table the current general plan use element update affecting the Sand Creek focus area.
We have a motion by Councilmember Overchuk. We have a second by Councilmember Thorpe. If there's no discussion,
I just want to add, and I appreciate Councilwoman Overchuk's comments. I don't think, even outside the HPC discussion, I I think we would still be sitting here. We need to do a better job of bringing the right people to the table, whether it's Mrs. Cow, Mrs. Albers, whether it's our friends from Richland, whoever. They need to be at the table when we're talking through these things. We can't just piecemeal this together, talk to one group over here and then talk to another group over here and then have folks call us up and say we need to sit down with you because we can't get in contact with the right people to be in this discussion. So I'm not going to let staff off the hook on this one because we're not doing it right, and we got to do it right moving forward.
We have a motion and a second. If there is no more discussion, please cast your votes.
There are 5 affirmative votes to table the motion.
Thank you. Are there any public comments? Fred Hoskins.
My goodness. Mary, I want to say Leon, but it's Noel. Anyhow, Sean, Tony, Lori. I haven't been here. What?
What was my name?
What's that mean?
Mary, he's got 3 minutes.
He said name
Please
down.
speak into the microphone because it is being recorded so people can hear you at home. Thank you.
Speak in the microphone? Okay, I always thought I was too noisy. Anyhow, I had to do this, and she said, you're not going to wear that shirt and the pants you've had on for 3 days. And I said, hey, it doesn't make any difference the way I dress. What makes a difference is if they listen. And more than that, if they do something about it. Now, hello, Ron. I'm underwhelmed. I'm a citizen that's underwhelmed with a lack of activity in areas that you seem to want to just simply ignore. Where was the first city council meeting held? No, you know, and I know, but it's rotting, all right? The other circumstance is we've gone through city councils and city managers that have done nada initiating anything about the yard, if you will. A proposal was written, it's ignored. Okay? The hard house that's rotting, and it doesn't seem to me that you show any kind of civic pride. I'm sorry, you can do all the proclamations you want. But why don't we proclaim this city as has a foundation? It has a meaning. Okay? Let's do something about the hard house. Let's make a decision about the yard. It's time. And you put it on the back burner. So it underwhelmed me in the lack of, I'm going to call it civic pride, where you have a big group of citizens coming before you, pleading, saying, let's do this, let's do that, and you don't get any answers. You get ignored. Well, I hope you understand. I don't want to be ignored.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Staff communications.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Just a couple items. Tomorrow night at the Antioch Library, there's going to be a Family Care Center community information session being held regarding that facility. It's from 7 to 8 o'clock, so I'd like to encourage the community to attend that. Also, this Thursday, the 26th, is going to be our final Food Truck Thursday out at the community center. So the one last week was held in conjunction with the Red Sand Project, and that's still going strong and a real good event. And then the other thing I want to mention is that on November the 1st, Wednesday evening, there's going to be a special city council meeting, and this is related to the extension of the urgency ordinance for the for all commercial uses of medical marijuana, or not medical, but of marijuana, all medical marijuana uses. So I'd like to mention that. And then finally, we lost a real great member of our community this week, Dave Sanderson, who was with the City of Antioch for many years in our recreation department and was very active in our senior community, taking them on their trips around the world. He unfortunately unexpectedly passed away this week. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. As far as council communication future agenda items, I would like to put on a nearby agenda the hiring of an economic development director. Are there any other agenda items or communications? Councilmember Overchalk.
It was brought up again tonight. The boxes, I know I have asked for that to be brought back for an ordinance on those boxes. That was something that Councilwoman Wilson asked for a couple years ago, I believe. But in coming down Contra Loma this morning at the Save Mart, Lucky's, I don't know which it is anymore, there's now furniture in the parking lot next to those boxes. I mean, mattresses, couches, you name it, it's there. And the boxes are just overflowing through the whole parking lot. And they've just repaved that whole parking lot in there. So they've put a lot of money into it. So I know somebody's receiving revenue for it, but we really, really need to look at these boxes because I see people digging in them again and just trashing the areas around them. So thank you.
Councilmember Tiscarino.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just, not to add it to agenda at a future, but for future discussions. But there was an individual spoke on behalf of speeding. One animal that was their animal, their cat was killed. I've had a couple meetings with citizens this week regarding speeding areas around neighborhoods. Again, they may be addressing or coming up to the city in regards to speed tables or speed bumps. So that's something that we need to be prepared. I know that, and I thank our police department, and that's one of the things I did relate to our folks that I did have discussion with, that we do have patrols out there. You see a big presence of police officers out there. So we're going to continue to do that. But with that said, we still have folks that like to rev it up and speed, and so we're going to have to address that. I also want to let you know that I had an opportunity to attend the White Pony Express out there at A Street. It was a great event, church event that brought in very good clothing, shoes, toys, and things like that to the community for folks that are in need. It was really well prepared and set up correctly, and they did an excellent job. And I told them that if I have an opportunity, then I'm going to try to actually volunteer and help them out next year. So I think it's a very good event. So those are good community. We did recognize some citizens out here that are doing great things to the city of Antioch, but there's also some organizations as well that do some great things for the city of Antioch. So we want to recognize those folks. And last thought is, my condolences to the Sanderson family. One of the things I remember is as a teenage kid, Dave was one of the first guys that hired me as a umpire. A teenage umpire for the city of Antioch. So one of my first jobs. So I did draw a paycheck from the city, so I do expect a pension. Thank you.
And speed tables is on the agenda in 2 weeks, right? Very good. Councilmember Thorpe?
Yes, I had a while ago requested to look at smart growth around the Hillcrest specific plan and maybe around some of our exits. So I don't know where we're at with that, but I think I'd like to rethink that and really look at it as after my experience in this ad hoc committee with the as an ad hoc committee, and if we can bring that instead as an agenda item, and we'll forego thinking or having staff work on the big policy side, so we can at least give, or at least drive that discussion and then bring something to the council.
Councilmember Wilson.
No agenda item, but I want to make an announcement. On October 31st, our police department will be hosting a trick-or-treat at the community center from 3:30 to 6. So everybody come out, bring your kids. You can dress in costume, or you can come as yourself. I went last year. I know Councilmember Orgachuk went last year. It was very fun. They'll have a haunted house, I understand, and candy, face painting. Will you be dressing up? No? Okay. Oh. So I just wanted to make that announcement so people know about it. So there are events. There are events that go on in the city. There's a lot. So please go to that trick or treat.
Thank you. And with that, this meeting, we will adjourn in the name of Dave Sanderson. Meeting adjourned.